Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. Anyway, it's time for another edition of the YUNOREVIEW, a bunch of records I didn't have the time to review formally, so I'm talking about them all here, gauntlet style, one after another in a single video. And now that it's been explained to you, let's go! This is the newly released posthumous Lost album from underground legend Mr. Alan Vega of Suicide fame. This LP has got some pretty evocative cuts on it that I think are a must-listen for any experimental music fan. I'll say personally, though, this is not necessarily my favorite era of his career or his creative output, but as somebody who's been a longtime fan of his, loved his last full-length record, obviously loved that classic Suicide stuff, this is definitely worth checking out. Rapper and singer iLoveMakonnen. Nice to hear him back in the saddle with a few bangers on this new LP. Some songs that strangely enough feel a little Prince influenced, and even a track with a really good Lil B feature. Now, still to this day, he has quite a bit of limitations vocally, and the songwriting on this thing is not that dynamic, it's not that versatile. There are some tracks and lines that get quite repetitive and mind-numbing, but look, there's some good tracks here, and it's certainly a reminder of the potential that we lost when the music industry, in a very odd and disappointing way, kind of like brought him in after he had that huge hit, chewed him up, and then spit him out. And I think prematurely, because with proper industry support, I think there could have been years of much better music coming down the pipe, because certainly on his own, you know, he's come together with some good stuff here. New AJ Tracey record, certainly some bops on here, can't deny that, but it is a long record, and over the course of that LP, it becomes very clear very quickly that AJ's rap style and rappability is just not that versatile. He sounds very similar on nearly every track, and not in a way that's all that complimentary either. If you were to attempt a project of this length into the future, because again, I've enjoyed singles of his in the past, but an entire project, I mean, it's got to get switched up. The vocal inflections, the style, it's just really all too samey. New record from the band Crumb, as expected. It is easygoing, it's serene, it is somewhat ambient, it's kind of dreamy as well, but also catchy. You know, if you like your pop and indie rock instrumentation with a bit of mellowness to it, give it a listen. You know, it doesn't really hit all that hard for me. I am quite picky when it comes to dreamier sounds, sleepier sounds and styles, as maybe it doesn't have enough bite for me, doesn't feel as engaging as I would like it to. But I know, you know, this is certainly the vibe of some people, and if that is your deal, this is worth a listen, because, look, I will say, even though I'm not a huge fan of this, and I was not a huge fan of their last LP, the production and instrumentation on this new one is a lot more colorful and groovy. So, you know, there have been notable improvements made, and if you loved the last LP, I think you will enjoy the efforts to kind of beef up the sound a little bit and play a little bit more with color and timbre on this new one. New and very curious record from electronic music producer Andy Stott this time around. It's an album that in some cases just doesn't really seem like it knows what it wants to do. Some tracks here and there feel like some of the most ambient leaning and serene material Stott has dropped to date. Other songs, especially on the back end, get quite abrasive and almost glitchy. And then there is the closer that sounds like almost like he's attempting to write a song recorded by that band that we see at, you know, numerous points in like the original Twin Peaks series, you know, with that super dreamy instrumental style. So yeah, you know, this is definitely one of Stott's more unpredictable releases, and I don't think it's the better for it necessarily. It's a bit of a mess. Some tracks go over way better than others, and even the songs that seem like they're in his typical style, I don't know. I think he's had bigger triumphs in the past when it comes to this headier side of techno. New Dinosaur Jr. record. New record from legendary 90s rock band Dinosaur Jr. They are honestly taking some risks on this one, and admirable ones too. You know, I love the way the band kind of fattened their sound and embraced their psychedelic undertones through the 2000s, and it seems like start of a new decade, J.A.S and company are really trying to break the mold. One time with a piano ballad, another time with guitar riffs that sound like they're, I don't know, from like a Thin Lizzy song or something like that. And miraculously, there's multiple songs here where Jay's vocals are like up, 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 really up, and the guitars are turned down, notably. Now, all of these changes I don't think result in very much good material. In fact, these are kind of all the worst aspects of the record, in my opinion. But there was an attempt. I like that they tried. It's certainly more intriguing than, you know, hearing them kind of blow through another series of songs that kind of just stick to the same exact rubric a lot of their records in the past have. Latest record from rock duo Royal Blood here, a bass and drum duo with obviously, like, you know, tons of vocals on these songs as well. Some real rock vibes, some real rockin' riffs on this LP. And look, for years this band has been compared to Death from Above 1979. Merely because of like that bass and drum makeup, even though I think that stylistically their influences tend to run a little bit more toward like alt rock and some hard rock and even a little bit of blues here and there on some of their licks and some of their riffs. But for whatever reason, this record to me like is the record that feels the most Death from Above 1979. These really do feel like Death from Above songs, and not particularly good ones. And yeah, I don't know. That's just the vibe on this one for some reason. I'm just not digging it. Experimental black metal outfit Krallice is back, brand new record, and this seems to be finally their quarantine opus. Lots of bands and artists have come out with original records over the course of this pandemic, over the course of quarantine, inspired by the experience in a number of different ways. Most notably, this has impacted the sound of this record on the recording side. Apparently, the drums were recorded and done over a phone. The vocals were recorded in a car. Colin Marston was kind of assembling much of everything else on his own, instrumentally in his own studio. Nice to have a member of your band that has access to a full music studio and is actually one of the most talented metal producers in the underground today. That's always a plus. But yeah, there are some passages of this record I like quite a bit. I think the inclusion of synthesizers at multiple points were quite great. The vocals actually go over much better than expected too. I mean, the biggest issue that I have is really with some of the drum mixing and recording on this LP, especially in how the drums seem to overpower much of everything on some tracks, especially the bell of that cymbal that is so loud it's nearly deafening. I mean, I suppose that black metal does have a history of being very raw and not featuring the best recordings or anything like that. But you know what, like Krallice's recordings up until this point have been so good and been so impressive that you're so close to it being great. You might as well do everything that you can to get all the way there. So, I don't know. I mean, there's just like some mixing and production issues that I have with songs, mostly on the front end, that kind of ruin the experience up until the midpoint. But once you get past there and the synths start soaking up some of the space and the compositions get a little bit more instrumentally dense and experimental, that's when I feel like this record really kind of hits a stride and hopefully points toward a new direction for the band. You know, as they've kind of flirted with more synthesizers here and there on past records, I feel like there's always been something to it, but it's not been fully flushed out yet. And maybe on a new LP, maybe once we're past quarantine, we'll either hear that or an even newer direction, as Krallice always seems to be these days, looking for some new ideas and concepts to burn through. This UK rap duo I talked about on the Fantano channel dropped a mixtape not too long after, and it's got a few bangers on it. And as I was noting in that video, like, the vocals and the delivery are certainly top notch, but as I was listening to the entire mixtape, this, you know, kind of brief little project over here, it did show that there is kind of like a limitation to how versatile these two guys are in terms of like what they want to express on a track and what kind of beats they're writing, what kind of songs they're writing. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's going to be an extension across the singles and the bangers they're trying to put out, which, by the way, they could always be writing better choruses. But yeah, once you kind of scratch the surface beyond some of the hits or the tracks that are trying to be super aggressive, there's not a lot there. So, I mean, past this point, I guess what I'm looking for in terms of a longer project from these two is just like some quality layers beyond the kind of gritty material that are getting people into the door. I mean, you know, it's kind of an attempt at a breakthrough mixtape, so maybe you just kind of want to give the fans exactly what they're expecting and what you're known to do up till now, but hoping for more growth and versatility into the future. Yes, this is a very quaint style of indie folk and indie singing and songwriting that honestly, I think went completely out of style in the 2000s. It's just way too damn quaint. I mean, to me, this album sounds like your vibe if, like, you have a really killer Etsy page. Like, you're just killing it on Etsy. You're making 6 figures a year off of Etsy, and this is like your jam. You're just jamming this all freaking day, just like pumping out your handcrafted, silk printed live, laugh, love posters. But yeah, that's kind of the vibe that this gives off. The instrumentation, super gentle, but also very bland and like lacking in any sort of like soul or seasoning. There are some compelling and pretty tunes here and there, but it's all just like way too breezy and easygoing and quite forgettable. But again, you know, that could be somebody's vibe. It's not my vibe. Undo K from Hot, new side band featuring Zach Hill that a lot of Death Grips fans are just freaking out about because, you know, it's Death Grips related. Are we going to hear a review about it? Oh my God, it's crazy. Da, 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 da. Look, there are some passages of this thing that remind me of some of the more noisy and experimental passages from Zach's solo stuff, specifically his Astrological Straits record, which is cool in general. I like that record, but there are a lot of tracks on here that are kind of obnoxious, don't go over that well, and aren't necessarily as experimental as they are just, I don't know, off-putting and redundant, as well as just like throwing out a lot of force but not necessarily connecting it to anything compelling. To me, this record sounds like what Death Grips probably sounds like to people who hate Death Grips, I guess is the way that I could put it. Next take on this new project from Bruiser Wolf, who is a rapper and an incredibly unique voice, Danny Brown's Bruiser Brigade. This new record over here, it really showcases his one-of-a-kind rap style that is very raspy, a bit of a high-pitched timbre on the voice, very funny in terms of the bars and issues and subjects he presents and what he says about them. Like, the record is loaded with insane fucking one-liners, and that's really all I can say. Like, if this guy does not make it in rap, he should, if there's any justice in this world, have a future in stand-up comedy, because he's just like literally busting out some of the most hilarious lines I've heard all year, and doing it so effortlessly. Like, the observations that he pulls up, and again, the angles he puts on them, just make this record a treat to listen to, at least in terms of like observing the things that Bruiser Wolf is saying. Then there's kind of the other aspect of the album, and that's kind of the music side. The thing about his rap style is that the flows are very repetitive, and the vocal delivery isn't exactly like musical. As he's riding the beat, it almost sounds like he's kind of just telling a joke and then pausing for laughs or applause or some kind of reaction. You know, it sounds like he's doing stand-up on top of hip-hop beats, which I suppose is a unique approach to the whole thing, but musically speaking, it doesn't run as very kind of compelling to me. You know, as I'm kind of diving deeper into the project and I'm hearing another track and another track and another track, there's just not enough songs that I think are like delivering head-nodding flows, choruses that really stick with you. There are certainly a few, but they're just not really happening enough on this project. And look, I love the unique style. I love the unique voice. I've heard this one project from this guy, and merely from this impression, I will now and forever be able to recognize him instantaneously. His sound and his style is that bold, and it is that out there. But if there could be some adjustments made at some point to just make it more musical and make it a little more vibeable, I suppose, it would be for the better. New record over here from Brazilian artist Duda Beat, who has a pretty futuristic fusion here of pop, alternative R&B, bossa nova, even reggae in a few spots. Now, look, the record stylistically is a little all over the place. The reggae-inspired cuts are especially weak in comparison with the other songs here, but the more forward-thinking cuts that take on more Brazilian styles and sounds are some of the most novel and groundbreaking on the entire LP, some of the catchiest and most compelling too. Everything else falls a little flat here and there, or feels like it's kind of in competition with stuff that's already kind of achieving success in, you know, like more of a neo-soul or alternative R&B style, for example, and just like kind of leagues ahead of what's being attempted here. Again, the fact that all of these sounds are coming together onto one LP certainly makes it a unique experience, but don't be surprised if, as you're listening through this, you find that there are kind of like, you know, weak links in the chain of styles and sounds that are being attempted here. Still, I do think there are some great highlights on this LP, and certainly make Duda Beat someone to watch in the oncoming years. New LP from the Black Keys, Delta Kream, where they continue their efforts to, I think, get a little bit back in touch with their roots and their bluesy beginnings, now with a series of classic blues covers, which, as somebody who was a fan of their older stuff back in the day, some of my favorite Black Keys material from that point in time was cover material. So, you know, I went into this at least a little bit excited, but came to find out that, yeah, it's kind of a middling electric blues record with very mild interpretations of these tracks that sound like they could be used for a car commercial or something like that. I mean, granted, there are some pretty good guitar solos, and Dan does his best to maybe put on a few different vocal styles to break things up stylistically, but it's just not flames from front to back. It's just like way too bland and relaxed. I mean, it's no B.B. King, and I'll say that. Zishin, Why You Know Review, Why You Know Review, Why You Know Review. That has been the Why You Know Review. Thank you very much for watching. Around here, you can find another video to check out. Maybe check out some of our other Why You Know Review videos. And yeah, I think you are the best, the greatest person. Mwah. Music. Why You Know Review forever.